welcome to the Center for Society and Genetics 9th Annual Symposium, Made for Each Other, Coevolution of Dogs and Humans. We're really glad to see you here. And we have a great program today, so hopefully you'll go back and forth between the different booths and demonstrations. And over here there's going to be talks all day that are a really interesting mix of academic talks as well as talks from people in the community that are working directly with dogs. And so I hope you enjoy the mix of the practical and the theoretical that we have for you today. And so Deborah Greenfield is going to introduce the first speaker, Robert Cabral.
Good morning, and welcome to the UCLA Center for Society and Genetics Annual Symposium. I'm Deborah Greenfield. I'm an attorney and an adjunct professor with the center, and I thank you all for joining us today and finding your way here. And I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker. Robert Cabral is a canine behaviorist and founder of Bound Angels, an organization that works with municipal shelters and rescue organizations to increase adoptions and to rehabilitate dogs with behavioral issues, including those considered dangerous and aggressive. Bound Angels strives to change the public policy on kill shelters and to expose and alleviate animal sufferings. He created the Shelter Angel video program, where artistic YouTube videos have resulted in 100% adoption rates for municipal shelter dogs and cats, and published Selling Used Dogs, an online resource for rescue workers, shelters, and humane organizations. Robert will be sharing his unique insights regarding human emotions and dog instincts. His knowledge helped me to understand my new rescue dog and my own emotions in response to her. So I'm particularly happy to welcome Robert Cabral.
There are no bad dogs. Well, maybe a few. Robert Cabral loves dogs, and dogs love Robert. Robert works with animal shelters across the country to determine if there is hope for the hopeless. His unique campaigns through Bound Angels have saved countless dogs sentenced to death at animal shelters, and his work has inspired others to do the same. As a behaviorist, Robert's work helps dogs, not just any dogs. These are dogs the world has given up on and sentenced to death. His unprecedented success rate with dogs other trainers gave up on or won't even approach is a testament to his skill. He uses the skills of a Zen master to transform even the most difficult and frightened dogs in a compassionate manner.
This dog is very aggressive towards other dogs, doesn't like other dogs, at least particularly this one. Do you see I'm not giving her any attention, not any loving strokes or anything like that? That's going to make her feel like what she's doing is okay. Those behaviors are completely ignored until I can get her to understand what no means. And no means that we're not going to go after that other dog. No. No.
Robert doesn't believe in conventional training. Instead, he focuses on what troubles each individual dog and develops a specific approach based on their fears, issues, and problems.
Good. So now we have a dog that's calmer, more attentive, and easier to control. So you've got a dog that just a few minutes ago was trying to kill anything that walked, and now she's absolutely calm.
Robert dedicates his life to saving those most in need. He is the last call these dogs have. His training philosophy is unlike any other. Robert's method of rehabilitating dogs is focused on understanding difficult behaviors and solving them. You can't save all the animals in the world, but you can save one.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Before I start my speech, I'd like you to take a drive with me and imagine us being in a car and taking a drive from here to Chicago. And the little yellow line you see in the middle of the road, the entire way, is paved with dogs. There's a dog laid end to end the entire way. That's the amount of dogs that we kill in this country every year. I shy away from the term euthanasia because we would euthanize a dog that is suffering immediately, a dog we could not save. A compassionate pet owner would put that dog out of its suffering. Unfortunately, the dogs that we kill in the shelters are misunderstood. The focus of what I do is based on this misunderstanding of dogs. The human emotion oftentimes gets in the way of the canine instinct. We want to love a dog the way we think that dog should be loved, not the way that dog needs to be loved. So when communication breaks down, when the little treat and the clicker and the pet and sleeping in our bed doesn't work, we give up on that dog and we dump them in the shelter. And that's when sadness takes over. I wrote an article called Kennel Syndrome. And in kennel syndrome, something really scary happens to a dog that's used to living on carpet, in a home, sleeping in a bed with a family that's being loved with children and other dogs, is suddenly isolated in a very cold, damp, concrete cell with a steel bar in the front. The first thing they develop is what's called barrier aggression. So everyone who approaches the front of that kennel, they bark and bark and bark. And those people are scared away. And as those people move away from them, they move away from the dog, they regress. That dog is feeling that they had an intention to do something wrong. The dog starts to break down its social skills and become feral again. And besides being feral, the dog becomes so confused that it doesn't know what's going on. It doesn't understand that a person approaching it out of confusion is often approaching it in the dog's mind to hurt it. So the more a dog learns that I bark, you go away, I bark, you go away, eventually the dog learns that you must have a bad intention because you keep leaving when I bark, which is why so often mailman, delivery people get bit by dogs on property. It's very common for dogs to act out in ways that we don't understand, and as we try and we strive to learn more about the dog, we force them into a position that they can't succeed. In all training and all things you'll see here, the single most important goal we should have with a dog is to do what is fair to the dog. So if we're going to teach a dog something, we should teach the dog in a way that the dog cannot fail. Okay? We can use a treat. Everything in training must start out with a very fair approach to the dog. Everything starts out with a treat and a toy. There should be no hard training to start out with a dog. Before we ever begin training, everything is based on a relationship. When a dog is in a kennel or a shelter, there is no relationship to a human. There's a person who comes in, puts food down, comes in, takes food out. There's a person who comes in, sprays down a kennel run, and immediately leaves. So these dogs are being emotionally abused without really being abused. Our shelter system in this country is in serious trouble. I've worked with the LA City shelter system, I've worked with many, many independent shelters, and they're doing an amazing job in what they're doing, but their hands are tied. Everyone knows that the shelter is not at fault. I always say the people who dump the dog in the shelter are at fault for what's going on. The shelter's hands are tied. If you want to get a dog out, you can get the dog out. The shelters throughout the country are not killing millions of animals. What is killing these animals are the people who are giving up on them. We give up on animals when it becomes confusing. We give up on animals when we don't get it. So when the dog doesn't sit and the dog is jumping up on people and nipping at people, we yell at the dog. When the dog is yelled at, the dog goes further into a state of confusion. Behaviorally, anyone will tell you that when confusion enters into a dog's mind, our emotions tend to push them further and further away from us. There's no way a dog can communicate with us if we're yelling at them. That yelling energy, that vibe that a dog gets from their person is exacerbated in the shelter system. When a dog is in a run, a dog is a social animal per se. Once we socialize them, they're bred to be social. They're bred to be tamed. There's very few incidents of fatal dog bites. There's some history, you can look it up online. Fatal dog bites account for less than 12 per year. So you have a better chance of being struck by lightning than being killed by a dog. And most of those people killed are children. which is irresponsible ownership of parents, personally. I'm not going to get into that today. Dogs, the most important thing to focus on with the dog is how we communicate with them. And one of the things I talk about through kennel syndrome is to give a dog a chance to be a dog. Every dog that I approach, and in the 120 some odd videos I've done with Los Angeles City shelters, we have a 100% adoption rate. Every single one of those dogs is living in a home, being loved, or is in a rescue waiting for that home. So that's an unprecedented success rate. Because what I'm doing in these videos is showing people the potential this dog has. It's very simple to see that potential if you allow that dog to be a dog. And what's important to understand is that the dog you get from the shelter is not the dog you will have. A dog will develop a personality based on the relationship with its human. That is absolutely clear. A very dominant person will develop a very submissive dog. A very submissive person will develop a very dominant dog. That is why people who sleep with their dogs, and I sleep with my dogs, so I'm not saying that. People who sleep with their dogs, coddle their dogs, constantly hug and kiss their dogs, dress them in little dresses, and carry them in bags, have dogs that will bite. Especially little chihuahuas, little Yorkies, little dachshunds, stuff like that. Because it sets a confusion into the dog's mind, and the dog becomes protective. It's a pack animal. It becomes immediately protective over the person that loves it. When we give that dog that much love, it seeks to protect that love so that that love is never lost. My approach, the most sane approach that I've taken with a dog, is to give a dog a decompression time. Allow a dog to be a dog. Allow a dog to just be and to observe you as a fair human, which is something so many dogs don't have. We expect our dogs to perform. Instantly, I get people who call and say, my dog doesn't come when I call it. Well, then the dog must be broken. The problem is you have not developed a relationship with your dog to want it to come when you call it. When we work with shelter dogs, we give them a complete autonomy. I allow a dog to run around the field, to play, to run, to pee, to mark, to do whatever it's going to do before I approach it in order to start training or start relating with the dog. Okay, that is the number one thing. When that system of communication breaks down, we have a problem. And that problem I'm going to show you in this next video that I have, which is a very sad video, but something that should inspire you. There's an article that I wrote that's on my website, and all the information is up front, called The Binary Dog. The single most sane way to approach a dog is in the binary principle. For those of you who know computers, it's a 1 or a 0, and I equate it to a yes and a no. Very, very simply, a dog is either doing what I want it to do, or it is not doing what I want it to do. If it is not doing what I want it to do, I don't explain what I want it to do, I just say no. When it is doing what I want it to do, I give it a treat and I say yes. It's as simple as that. I've went into shelters in other cities and done this as an experiment, and I've had kennel employees in each wing of a kennel and have a treat in their hand. When the dog is quiet, we say yes and we give the dog a treat. Within 5 minutes, I was able to take an entire run of kennels with crazy, insane, barking shelter dogs and quiet them down. Every single dog, and I'm talking 99.9% of dogs, can be trained, can be loved, and can be in a home. If you want a purebred, there are those in shelters. But the basic family mutt, the shelter mutt, is probably the easiest, happiest, healthiest dog you could find. Whatever you want, they're out there. You have to give the dog a chance. Please read that article called The Binary Dog. It's imperative if you work in rescue. It's imperative if you have a dog and communication is breaking down. It's so simple. It's a 2-word answer. Yes and no. That's it. It's also available through my book that I wrote called Selling Used Dogs. Please watch this next video, and I'll come back. So in closing, I'd like to take I've got about 5 minutes or so for questions and answers. Yes, sir?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the work you're doing. I think it's really amazing. The thing that I'm curious about, when I watch some of the trainers on TV, like Cesar Millan,
Yeah.
as many episodes as I've seen of that, I've never been able to take away a technique from what he does that I could apply to my own dog's relationship. Pardon me? Yeah, I just, it just seems inapplicable or unpractical. But what you're saying makes so much sense, and already I could take away, just from the short time you've been talking, applications, you know, to the real world. I'm wondering, in your own experience, did your technique come from your own intuitive working with dogs? What influence do you have? Did you arrive at this place where you have this kind of understanding that you can now communicate with other people and inspire other people?
Thank you, that's a very good question. My background is 25 years of martial arts. I studied the very Zen approach to martial arts, and communication oftentimes is not verbal. I think the mistake we make is trying to explain things. Dogs live in a very instinctual world, we live in a very emotional world. It's very simple to see. To break communication down, again, I'm not going to pro or con any trainers on TV. I have no issues with them. The problem is it is entertainment. It's there for entertainment. They're selling dog food in between, episodes, and that's fine. The communication has to be clear to the dog, and it's very simple. If you understand the binary approach, it's either yes or no. And if we really want to make it that simple, you really don't even need a dog trainer. A dog is going to offer behavior. It's either going to sit, stand, jump, lay down, come, or not come. I can tag a yes or a no to that. As long as I give value to the yes and the no, the dog understands that. If there's a treat for the yes and a withholding of the treat for the no, it's very clear to the dog. In my more advanced training, in taking some of these dogs that I've taken out of the shelters, because I do believe every single dog deserves a second chance. I don't care how aggressive they are or anything. I do believe in a very firm correction. If that's necessary, I have no problem with very firm corrections on dogs, and I will go against trainers who do, because if I can save a dog's life by giving it a firm correction, I think the dog would opt for my method. Okay. It's just being very clear with the dog. Whatever your issues with the dog, there's flyers up front. All my information is available for free. The only goal of Bound Angels is not only to get dogs out of the shelters, but much, much more importantly, is to keep any single person from ever dumping a dog into a shelter ever again. If I can do that, my work has been done. Thank you for the question. Another? Yes, sir.
Firm correction.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, first of all, the corrections start with a no, But during aggression, when a dog gets into drive, and drive is something that you should probably look up online. Drive is like when a dog gets very angry, as we would call it. Dogs don't shut down with a no. Sometimes we need to immobilize a dog, whether we are, taking the dog off the ground or whatever, or whether we have to correct the dog with a firm hand or anything like that. And it's something I'm happy to talk to you about. I make no hiding of my techniques. When dogs are aggressive, remember, people who say they studied wolves and trained dogs in that method, and then use treats to stop aggression, it doesn't work. If you've ever watched two dogs fight, or a dog attack another person, which I've been privy to personally, and watched many, many occasions, dogs don't understand the clicker method. So it's only my goal, like I said, it's my goal to save a dog's life, not to be accepted by humans, but to save the life, and then be accepted by the people who share my vision of saving more animals. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
The kennel syndrome?
Yes.
I never heard that term, but I think that's a fascinating way that
I coined
dogs,
it.
a lot of behaviors are created by the environment and kennel, especially
Yes.
that kennel.
Yes.
Do you have a own kennel?
No, I don't. I don't take dogs out of shelters and train them and rehab them, because one thing, and this is a really important aspect of my philosophy of training, I believe dogs need to be trained with their humans. Sending dogs away is great if you're going to do agility and things like that, and to give a dog a basic understanding, like if you're sending a dog away for protection work or agility work or service work. But that training is absolutely useless to the dog, because a dog relates its training to the person who has a relationship with it during the learning of that training. When that dog comes back to you, it will then need to be trained, and any trainer will tell you this, with you to put that training onto the dog and to cement the relationship. A dog isn't going to do what you want it to do. In the old days, people would yank dogs around on prong collars and electric collars and beat them and get them to do stuff. And if I would say plots or down to the dog would go down, but the look in the dog's eye was like that. Where now we use very positive, motivated training. So if I tell my dog to plots, he's down, his ears are up, his tail is wagging, he's like, oh my God, I get a treat. Now, that's the way we should train dogs. They should be happy. Everything should be about creating happiness in the dog because it's a relationship we're going to share. To get someone to do something through coercion or compulsion is not really as happy or as positive as getting them to do it because they really love you and they bonded with you. Another question? Yes?
I just had a comment. I had a parent training class here at UCLA, and the technique was ignore and praise. And it sounds very similar.
Yes.
It's very simple,
Yeah.
but incredibly and surprisingly effective on children.
Yes.
When you can handle actually doing that and not getting mad and not yelling and stuff like that.
Children learn the same way as, I taught karate for 20 years, 10 of those I spent teaching children. When children were running around acting like complete idiots, I never yelled at them. I would just be quieter than them and speak to them in a tone that was below what they were saying so that they would have to be quiet to hear what I was saying. Same thing with a dog. A dog is acting like an idiot and we chase it around the room like an idiot. We just have two idiots chasing each other around the room. And I know that's not a very collegiate term here in a university environment. But the bottom line is we have to rise above. We're supposed to be the higher animal. But we're not acting like that often when we dump animals in shelters and blame our shelter system for killing so many animals when they can't get them if we don't put them there. Everybody knows that. That's really clear. I want to thank you for allowing me to be here and for sharing my vision. And if I can just inspire you to, yes, sir.
Could you just say the name of your book?
It's called Selling Used Dogs.
Selling
It's a program that I do in shelters, yes, and it's available on boundangels.org, and all the information is up front. There's a booth up front. I have flyers and all the information. If I could just inspire you to open your heart, whether you rescue a shelter animal or not, I could care less, but that you could inspire people to keep the animals they have, whether they get it out of a shelter or not. If they could keep the animal, open communication, be fair and be kind to that animal, and give it a chance at a fair life, then my work has been done here today. Thank you.